Hey, here we are
How's everybody
again
doing?
in the usual Thursday time slot. All those who can make it on a Thursday, say aye. Good to see you. Chris, I don't mean to steal your microphone. I'll go on mute.
That's all right.
You're the man. You're the man.
All right. So I this week we're going to do a presentation on how to generate automatic white papers, and I started building this automation and it took me a lot longer than an hour. So I'm just going to walk you guys through what I did and kind of explain what I did. Share my screen here. So basically everybody knows what a white paper is. It's a kind of a research paper that allows you to present a problem and a solution, and then most likely you're going to present your product as the solution, and you're going to use it to educate the audience, and then establish you as thought leader in that topic. So in this presentation, I'm going to show you how I basically generate a white paper automatically, and I'm going to be using OpenAI to actually write the white paper. I'm going to use a Google form to gather user input. So it would be a topic and a target audience. And then we're going to ask the user for an email address so that we can deliver the white paper to them. And it's going to be, the end product is going to be a Google Doc. So we're going to do, the form's going to save the data to a Google Sheet. Make.com is going to do the research with Perplexity and the writing. So it's going to do the background research, take the output from Perplexity, pump that into OpenAI to actually do the writing, and then assemble the white paper into a Google Doc. And if you guys haven't seen Perplexity, has everybody used Perplexity here? It's basically a kind of like ChatGPT, but it has, you can ask it anything and it'll do research. So I can say, search the web, research about the latest AI models, I guess. And I have the pro version, which I believe gives you a lot more functionality than just the free version. There is a free version. So it's actually going out and doing research, pulling sources, and then it assembles all those resources together into a report, which you could almost use as a white paper.
Did I miss something, Chris, or did you say that the intention of this was to write a single white paper, or are we using this to write a white paper that specifically takes into account the customer's needs? Like, in other words, if I'm talking to a prospect A today, B tomorrow, C the next day, I could almost like formulate a white paper that, addresses whatever I just had a conversation with them about and features my business. So this is like a multi-threaded, like a unique white paper for every prospect that overcomes objections and, talks about the features that they're most interested in and features our product. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. So I put together a Google Doc here, and you put in the user would put in their email address, the topic of the white paper, and you'd allow the user to generate the white paper. So that user could be you or it could be one of your customers. So you could use this as a lead magnet if you wanted to, and say, hey, you could use our tool to generate the white paper, or we could generate it for you. So basically, this is the form that would get filled out to generate it.
Going off.
So like I said, we're going to save the white paper to a Google Doc and email it to the user using the form that I just showed you. Those are all the tools. So let me show you where I started. I basically went to ChatGPT and I said, give me some specific guidelines on how to write a white paper, section by section, number the steps. In the steps where research is needed, provide a research prompt that I can use to have an LLM do research for that step. Label the prompt research prompt. So it outlined all the steps in that you would take to write a research paper. And then in the steps that require research, it gave me a prompt that I'll pass to Perplexity to do the actual research. And then I'm going to pump that research, that output that comes from Perplexity into the OpenAI. I'm basically using OpenAI to write section by section, but I'm pumping in the Perplexity research to write that section. And then at the end, I'm going to do the executive summary and assemble the whole report with the automation. So I basically took this step-by-step description of how to write an executive summary. The first thing I did is I actually built an OpenAI assistant on the back end on the API side, like we did last week. Some of you were on last week, so in order to keep all of this research and everything in a single thread, I'm going to be talking to an assistant, an OpenAI assistant on the back end using the OpenAI API. And I just created an assistant called Research Assistant. See if I can make this bigger. And then I gave it system instructions. You're an expert research assistant. And then that's basically all I did. Just created the OpenAI assistant, gave it that name, and then gave it those instructions. And here's the automation. So I built a form that copies the data, that basically saves the data into this Google Sheet. There's one automation that watches the Google Sheet for a new row, and then it does an HTTP request to the whitepaper automation. The whitepaper automation has a webhook that it's basically associated with that web URL that I'm calling, and it posts the data to that web URL.
Chris,
Mm-hmm.
could you explain what a webhook is, please? I've tried to get my brain around how is that different from an API call?
It's essentially the same thing, but with an API call, you have specific requirements so you post data. So you're doing an HTTP request, but you're posting data in that HTTP request. And a webhook is just basically listening at a web address for some data to come across. Okay. So in this webhook, there's a URL here, and this webhook is always listening for some data to come across to this URL, and you do what's called an HTTP post. So a form essentially does this. When you submit a form, it takes all the fields from your form and submits it via an HTTP post. So we could actually take data directly from a form if it posted to this URL and gather the data that way.
So the API is a request and a post, and the webhook is just a post.
It's a listener, right, Chris? Kind of like
it's a listener, but an API has specific requirements on what kind of data that it needs to see.
Okay, all right. I didn't mean to get it. I didn't mean to get it.
Yeah, an API will respond typically, but a webhook will just listen. So an API will listen and respond, and the webhook will just listen.
Thank you.
So I've got this thing. Sure, I've got this listening on this URL, and then this is actually watching for a new row, and it's posting to that URL. And the reason I do that is
that's clever. I like that's really slick.
Yeah, if I just have this automation watching the Google Sheet, if I get 10 rows all at once, then it's going to process those one at a time. If I have
and make 10 separate white papers?
Yes. So if I post this form out on the internet and I tell everybody, hey, come create a white paper. Well, if I post that form data, say I have 10 requests come in, and if I post that form data and I have this watching a Google Sheet, it'll do them one at a time. So right. They won't do it concurrently. So with this, I actually have this watching the sheet and posting to this, and it can post 10 at a time, and they'll all run concurrently.
Mm-hmm.
So
where does the URL? Is it the URL of the form, or you? So the form
is saving here to the sheet.
No. So if I'm on the outside, let me walk through that just to make sure I understand. I think I got it, but I might be wrong.
Here's the URL.
I go and I fill out this form, and this form is on a URL. When you hit submit, where does it go?
It submits to this sheet.
Oh, right.
Save it.
Okay.
By default, Google Forms typically save to a sheet.
Yes.
But there is a plugin where you can have that form post directly to a URL.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I could skip this step and have it post directly to here.
What fun would that be?
With a regular form, it's pretty easy. I'd actually rather do it that way. But with Google Forms, because it's a default that you have to save to this sheet.
Yeah, I got it.
So I'll walk you through here. So
cool. Good stuff.
This is gonna pick up the data saved by the form. It's gonna pass it over here to this webhook. When this webhook receives the data, I'm basically gonna save those three things in variables. So I've got a topic variable, target. This should be target audience, but I just called it target. And then I have their email.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is the guidelines that I got from ChatGPT over here. This is all the all the steps to create the white paper. I'm just saving that in a variable called white paper guidelines. Now I'm going to initiate the conversation with the assistant, and I basically just tell the assistant, see, I've selected the research assistant that I created on the back end, and I tell the assistant, I would like you to help me write a white paper today. The topic is, this is the topic that the user filled out on the form. This is the target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the white paper guidelines that we got from ChatGPT. So this is an OpenAI call. I'm telling the assistant we're going to write a white paper, and that's all I'm telling it. Now I know there are 11 sections in those guidelines, but the last one is the executive summary. And I'm going to write that at the end because I want to go through the entire paper first and then write the executive summary at the end, but I'm going to stick the executive summary at the top. So I'm going to wait till the very end to write the first section. So I'm going to start at step 2. Then here I'm just doing a regular chat completion where I'm asking OpenAI to tell me, is there a research prompt in this step? So I'm saying, please determine whether or not there's a research prompt in step number, whatever number I'm on. I've got this repeater. The first time it comes through, it's going to be step 2. So I'm saying, please determine whether or not there's a research prompt in step 2 of the following content. If yes, there is a, if yes, extract the research prompt. If no, reply with a no. And then here are the guidelines. So in this instance, on the first route through this, it's going to look at step 2 of these guidelines and determine whether or not there's a research prompt there. So I'm saving that answer here. It's either going to be a no, because there's no research prompt, or it's going to be the research prompt that I'm going to use in Perplexity. So I put a router here. If the research prompt is not no, so if prompt from this step is not equal to no, I'm going to do the research because I've got a research prompt. This is the Perplexity call, which is similar to the OpenAI call. I'm just, go ahead, question?
Chris, on your filter, you have some
the filter
brackets.
Yeah,
That's
this is just
label,
this is just a label. Yeah.
Okay. So that's not any code that needs to be in there. You just use coding to, okay.
Yeah, it's just a not equal, I could say.
Got it.
Is not no.
I was just, for a second there, I was like, wait a minute, what's that code at the top? And so
it's easier to read like that.
Right. Especially for a coder.
So I'm calling Perplexity this a similar way I would do the OpenAI call over here. But I'm telling it, you are an expert researcher. Please search the web and extract relevant supporting experts from at least 10 articles on the following topic for a white paper. I need source information and links as well, please. I always say please. Then I'm pulling the topic from the variable that this is what the user entered on the form originally, the topic and the target audience. And then the prompt is the research prompt that I pulled, that I had OpenAI extract from the guidelines. So I've got the research prompt here. I'm using this prompt here.
Oh, so then the automation is actually doing the research. You're not going and kicking off and filling it in. You provided the variables or the, what do you call them? Go back to that last thing you just popped up.
This one?
Perplex, yeah. So it says, yeah, here's the topic and the target. Do it. It's an object.
Yeah, it's right. I'm basically automatically doing what I did here
by hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So then I'm saving that research that I'm getting back from Perplexity. This is the answer from Perplexity. And then so I go up here if there's research to be done, and then I'm always going to run this route. If there's research to be done, I do this branch, and I'm always going to run this route. But when I come back from this branch, I have to grab this research again, coming back from the branch. That's that weird rule that I was telling you about. If I'm off to a branch and I want to save a variable, so I'm saving the section research here, I have to actually retrieve it when I come off this branch here. So I'm basically just grabbing that section research that I generated up here, basically. So I've got the research for this section. Now I'm going to write the section, and I'm talking to that OpenAI research assistant. I'm saying, please write section number. The first time it's going to be 2. So please write section 2 of this white paper. Here's the background research for this section. I'm grabbing that background research here, including it in the context, and then I'm saying, please provide your output in markdown format starting with header 3. So header 3 is going to be a section starting with header 3. Then OpenAI is going to write that section. I'm going to save the section, and I call that save section. And then we were talking about last week, we were talking about iterators. This is a repeater is almost the same as an iterator, but you're basically telling it how many steps to do. An aggregator is going to aggregate from the loop. So each of these sections, I'm going to aggregate them together. So I'm taking these sections and I'm going to put them all together.
Are
basically
these things like repeaters and aggregators? I haven't used a make yet. Are they part of the basic functionality of make?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so they come with it. You're just giving it instructions on where to go and what to put together.
Right. So at the end of the loop, I'm going to save the section. I'm going to give it a new line. So each time it comes through here, it's going to add the new section with a new line, add the new section with a new line, add the new section with a new line for each of those sections. So once I aggregate the sections, now I'm ready to write the executive summary.
And just, sorry, Chris, the repeater goes section 1, gets all the stuff. Section 2 gets all the stuff. Section 3, is that what the repeater does to loop through all your sections?
Yeah, but it's starting with section 2 because section 1 is the executive summary.
Yeah.
And I want to write that last.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to write the executive summary, and I'm saying, please write section 1, the executive summary of this white paper. Please provide your output in markdown format starting with header 3. Now, because I started this conversation over here, I talked about threads before, but basically we're going through a ChatGPT session. If you imagine a thread is an entire chat session that you're having with ChatGPT, I initiated that conversation over here, and I didn't specify a thread ID, which means this is a new conversation, give me a new thread. If I don't specify that, it gives me a new thread. See, it says, if it's empty, we create and return a new thread. So we're starting a chat session here. This one, I just wanted to pull the research from a random session, so I don't need to include that in the conversation. I'm just having it pull out the research prompt. Now I'm continuing the conversation over here in the same chat session that I started. I've got this thread ID here from the original. If I hover over that, you can see that's where that thread ID comes from, the very first one. And then so I'm saving this entire conversation in that thread. Now when I ask it to write the executive summary, it has the whole conversation in the thread. So I don't have to include any context here. I'm just saying you have the entire conversation, write the executive summary. And I've got that same thread ID here. So it's all on the same thread. Then I'm assembling the report, and I'm also converting it to HTML in that last step. So I have the topic. This is an H1 header in Markdown. That's what it looks like. So that's the topic that the user entered, followed by a new line. Then I got the executive summary there, which is that section 1. And then I have the aggregated sections from over here. So I've assembled the report, and this is all Markdown, but I am converting it to HTML at the same time. So what comes out of here is HTML.
So, Chris, the aggregated sections, each one of those sections represents a line that was put into the sheet via the form, correct?
No, each one of the sections was written by ChatGPT.
Based on the information put into the form.
Right. So this was inputted by the form. That's the topic.
Okay.
So if I did something on the latest AI models, and when I entered that into the form, I'm basically just pulling what the user put in there. But here, these two were actually generated by OpenAI. This is the executive summary. This is the aggregated rest of the sections. Does that make sense? Because I've saved all the output from ChatGPT in these variables.
But each one of those represents one entry. I mean, when you say aggregated, it's not pulling all form entry or each form entry results into the same text? If that makes
No,
sense?
the only thing coming from the form is this topic. I just
Right.
pulled that variable.
But
That's the only thing.
ultimately, that topic is going to be for the white sheet that's going to go to the person that filled out the form with that topic.
Right. This is what the user entered because I saved it
Right.
over here. It's this variable is what the user entered. It came in through
Right.
this webhook. But everything else on the report was generated by ChatGPT.
Okay. I
These
guess
other
I'm
two
confused
items.
about the part about aggregating the sections.
Mhm.
What sections are being aggregated?
So this is looping 8 times. It's starting with section 2, then it's going to do section 3, then it's going to do section 4,
Okay.
all the way to section 10, or was it 2 to 10 is 9 times, right? 8 times. So it's actually looping. It's writing each section. It's looping through here, doing one section at a time.
That's what the gray background represents?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then each time, ChatGPT is writing the section here. I'm saying, please write section I. I is the step. So the first time it comes through, it's going to write section 2, then it's going to write section 3, then it's going to write section 4. And it knows what to write because I'm giving it the information that we got from ChatGPT over here. When I asked it, see, they're all numbered. It's going to pull as it's going through those loops. It's going to do first section 2, then section 3, then section 4.
Oh, okay. That's where the sections are.
Yeah.
All right. I got it now. Thank you.
So then I assemble the report. It all comes out as HTML, and I'm creating a Google Doc with that topic name, which is what the user punched in. I have to put the HTML tags at the beginning and the end, and then this is the output from this. This is the entire report in HTML. Then I'm going to email it. The user provided their email address. I'm saying, here's your white paper in the email. And then this Google Doc provides a web view link. You can see it here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just providing that link in the email, and that's it. Now, if you guys want to try this out, this is on. Let me put this form in the chat. Let's see. You guys go ahead and fill out the form, and we can watch it come through.
Chris, is there a function that'll like ring a little bell when somebody fills out the new form request?
I wish. Or like, it doesn't look like anybody's. Oh, there's one. There's a couple. It didn't do the rows 2 and 3 because I actually was playing with those earlier. So now this one's going to pick up. It runs every minute. See, it last ran. It hasn't actually picked them up yet.
So does it cost an op to run every minute? So every minute you get charged an operation. That's what they're called, right? Operation.
Yeah, the way this is set up, it costs 1 operation. Let's see. I wonder if I should just run this. Let's see.
Yeah, I submitted one.
It costs an operation regardless of whether there's new information in there or not, right?
Yeah, because it's checking. Looks like it might have picked them up.
But it doesn't run your automation, right, unless there's a new record added.
Right. So this one watches for the new rows, and then it calls this other automation. Let's see if this one's running. Oops, doesn't look like it's running. I'll give this some help.
You're not allowed to do that.
Why not looking at the right sheet? It might not be looking at the right sheet. Let's see. Huh.
Does it matter that there's spaces above the rows where we filled in the information on that Excel sheet? Does it stop because it thinks that there's nothing there?
No, it should see it.
Like, you see that 2 and 3 are blank, so that's why I'm wondering if it just thinks that there's nothing there.
No, that's what so when I'm saying choose where to start, I'm trying to get it to force to pick a row, but it's not seeing anything there.
Okay.
Let me see here. Always got to be something, huh?
Well, the beauty of automation
There.
is once you fix
There we go.
I was right.
You were right.
I was right.
Okay, so this thing should run, and we should see it there. It ran. It picked up, see, it did 5 operations, so it looks like it picked up 5 rows. Now it's running here. See, now you see it's running 2 at a time here.
Nice.
There you go. There's 4 running at once. This is going to cost me some money too.
Do they run sequentially, parallel? Can you define how
They're-
they run?
They're parallel. So like if I just had this instead of using this webhook, if I would have had this watching a sheet, they would have run sequentially. But because I had this watch the sheet and pass it off to the webhook, it did this 5 times, in a row. But then this is running concurrently.
And when you say it's going to cost you some money, you mean it's going to be like a penny or two?
Well, probably more than that because I'm using OpenAI tokens here, and you can see this one's actually running. You can see it going through, but it's going to do quite a bit of writing because it's doing 11 sections, and I'm on 2 on this particular one. So you guys should be getting email pretty soon as these
Can you give us a
run
perspective
through all 11.
on the cost to run one through? Just like 10,000 foot view.
For this particular one, let me look at the one I created earlier.
Yeah, check your credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all these tools we're having fun with are starting to add up.
Oh yeah. So this is one I did on AI voice assistants, and this didn't finish. The one that I saw before was something like, oh, I only ran one section on this to test. Here we go. Here's one no, that was only, yeah. So you can see this is how many 22 pages long is this white paper, which is a lot of tokens, and your guys is going to be the same. So it's probably $5 or $6 to run this.
And we all owe you a beer.
I'll buy you one in Austin.
Okay,
$5
deal.
or $6 per person?
Yeah.
Per white paper? Okay.
Yeah, it just depends on like how long they are. I've created an automation for Darby Rollins who does a market sauce, his market sauce product, and it takes a half an hour to run, and it's like 46 pages long, and it's about $10. So maybe, I don't know, maybe like 250 for the length of this thing.
That's for a craft beer. That's a quarter of a beer.
And if you're using it to get leads, depending on what your product is, 250 for a lead isn't bad. Let's see.
Just to give you some context, like we've got more than 1,000 people using Prompt Vault, and pulling the cranks and levers on there daily. And our spend is probably not more than a few $100s a month in terms of, all the combined usage of all the LLMs and everything.
Yeah, my book automation, it probably cost me about $25 to write a book, and that's like a 150-page book. Okay, one just finished. I just saw it drop off. Oh, it's a warning. Let's see what the warning is. Invalid email address. I guess somebody left email address blank, but I thought I required it. Let's see what Let's see what it looks like.
It is a required field on the form.
Because FYI, I didn't get an email yet, so it might be mine. Maybe I typed it wrong.
Price transparency in healthcare.
No, it's not me.
There might be something screwed up with my email module, but if you guys created something, I'll provide these to you. I'll put it in the sources folder, the resources folder on the replay. If you guys want to go in there, I'll include these in there. If you don't mind me sharing these or putting them somewhere where people can get to them.
I just popped the link back in. Somebody, I think Curtis said his Zoom crashed, so there's the doc link to start the beginning.
Here's a couple that were successes. So it looks like email went out.
I haven't gotten an email either.
Not mine. I'm the boring price transparency one.
Nothing boring about that.
Totally.
Yeah. Controversial, maybe.
Here's what I want. I want to just pull on the thread for a minute. I opened up a question. I don't know if you saw that, Chris. You've been kind of talking a lot, kind of teaching, but I basically said, please chime in and let us know how you see yourself either using this tool, as in specifically white papers, or how you might modify or build something similar to this in the context of whatever you're doing. And I got a couple answers in here, but I want to get a little more conversation and dialogue going so we can contextualize this across the landscape of, let's all wear our chief AI officer hat, right? Where can we apply AI across the business problem landscape? This is not to say everyone wants to make a white paper generator, but that might light up your Christmas tree, or you can see the possibility engine working and you go, ooh, if I just, instead of calling it this, I could do that. I'm coming up with a different kind of make installation that would actually automate a different facet of whether it's HR onboarding or any else. So let's go to Andrew Lopez, if you want to come off mute real quick and tell us a little bit more about what you mean when you say a content request.
So you guys, can you hear me?
Johnny on the spot. Yep.
Yeah. So in regards to content requests, we I have thousands of doctors that we service in regard for our SaaS with a service. We're a marketing agency with doing a lot of SEO, patient engagement, and retention for the practices, and we develop all the content for them. So I see this being a really great tool because we can actually do the research on the fly, right? I mean, I have so many content writers and editors that are going through it, and it's such a touchy, you know, subject, and everything definitely has to have eyes on it at the end of the day before it goes out and gets published. But having these checks and balances and research done beforehand I see is a great benefit. So that's where I see the tool, not exactly for the white paper, but for like blogging content, things of that nature. That's a request for our like ignition. We have a content ignition program. So, it's really heavily, a lot of content being deployed every month. So getting those custom requests from the doctors would be great.
Excellent.
Are you using WordPress for your blog stuff?
Yes.
Okay, let me show you something. This last step, I hate this interface. This last step, instead of saving to a Google Doc, there's a WordPress plugin that you can drop in here. You can create a post, and it takes, so I could, instead of doing this, I could do this. This is output to HTML. I can create a post here. Let's see.
And I'm sure you could leave that in draft, and then you just got your humans that are essentially reading it and going, yep, it looks good. Let's schedule it next week or tomorrow.
Right, under type, posts, and then I think there's draft mode in here.
Status.
Yeah.
Where's that? Here.
1, 2, up there you go.
Status.
Draft. Yep.
Perfect. That's why I was asking how much it costs to run each time, just for the pricing model, right? But again, too, what this does, it starts justifying the price. I mean, if you're in marketing and you're, charging for content, it starts justifying for that price just because of what you said. I mean, if it's a long post or it takes a lot of research, it could be upwards of $10, $15. So it starts, it gets my wheels spinning to see this thing working and, the monetization of it and, what the possibilities are.
Thank you for sharing. Lee, I want to go to you next. So Lee says, I can use this as a demo for AI and then leave the client with something that they can actually use. You want to put a little color on that for us?
Sure. So if I'm in an initial call or early in the process, instead of showing somebody how AI can draw a cat picture or something like that, here's a real, and obviously there are a lot more valid ways to do demos, but this is something where I could ask them, how would you like a white paper, on a topic that you could send out to your prospective clients? Well, that would be great. Great, let's make one. And just show them the process of going through and being able to do it, asking them, of course, in advance, what does your sales collateral and marketing collateral development process look like? How are you generating this kind of stuff? Are you doing it in-house, out-of-house? How much is that costing you? Lead them down that path, similar to what Andrew said. And then, just, at the end of the day, they've got a white paper that came out of the machine and they can actually use it as opposed to it's just, something they saw on a screen. It's a tangible takeaway from a sales call.
Nice.
One thought.
Dan, you have your hand up?
I was talking to Lee the other day, and I work with a lot of CIOs, and everyone's buried. They don't have 5 minutes of time as a salesperson. So if I can ask, what are you interested in? It would take me just a moment to poke them to my website or to my email, and whatever they're interested in, let them tell me what's interesting, and then from there I've got a great hot lead versus me saying, hey, I got something on security. I don't want to hear that. But by giving them a tool like this, it's going to directly address whatever's hot for them right now. I think this is phenomenal.
Like what is your problem right now? Like, you know what I mean? And then your email content going out is directed towards that. I love it. That's a great idea. Yeah.
One great use case for it is there's a guy on YouTube that he built an automation similar to this. While he's on a sales call, he's basically asking the prospect these questions as they're talking about the project. He's taking notes about the project in a form. And before he even gets off the call, he hits submit, and that automation generates a proposal, and it's in their inbox before they even get off the phone. I always thought that was an awesome.
And
use case.
when you can actually, like, when you're selling the service, which is AI, and you can showcase and be like, oh, at the end of the conversation, you're like, hey, guess what? You didn't know, but this is what I'm doing. Let me just show you. I filled out all these things, and by the way, you're going to see this happen. especially if you're selling something to sales guys, you're like, okay, I need that.
And that'd be, if you could build these things for sales teams, you could totally revolutionize the sales cycle. Because my biggest issue being a CTO or CIO is the back and forth. I have to go for people who are trying to build something for me that my team can't build, and to get it to where it says the right stuff for both of us. I could save so much time there.
It's great for pre-qualification too. If you have somebody fill in a form and have the AI evaluate whether or not they're actually worth talking to begin with.
For SDRs.
Any other questions or anything I can show you guys?
If I ever start a practice, Chris, I'm going to hire you away for twice what you're getting paid.
0 is 0.
I mean, it's going to be cheaper than you think, Jonathan.
I'm going to hire you away from your day job.
Okay. I'm looking for something.
So I got 2 sales guys beating the street right now on a new partnership we're forming.
Oh, awesome.
AI is one of the things we're going to market. So
did you guys
8 zeros?
Now, Chris, just to go back to the beginning of all of this, there's a ChatGPT based assistant that's doing the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah, and
this isn't
like I showed you,
this isn't all magic happening in Make. There's actually a pretty decent chunk of it that's happening in the assistant.
Yeah, but it's really simple to build. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, the assistant is the cleverest thing.
Let's see, where was it?
It is towards the beginning.
That's right here. So you basically go to, this is the API side.
Right.
You create a new assistant. I just called it, this is it here. I just called it Research Assistant. And I said, you are an expert assistant. And then when I go in here and I'm using one of these make modules, I can select that assistant. I called it Research Assistant. That's it right there.
And why did you choose GPT 4.0 rather than one of the other options?
That's just the newest, well, one of the newest models. It's the fastest. O1's the newest, but GPT 4.0 creates the best content at this point.
O1, I don't think you can do O1 and something that's got as many turns on the crank because they throttle you right now.
And it'll take forever too, because the O1 actually has to do some thinking. But also in this, it uses this assistant ID here, but I didn't have to do that because I could just select it, the Research Assistant, and it says GPT 4.0. But there's also a way to view threads in here. So if you look at, here's one of the automations that ran, you can see the entire thread with all my prompts. So I'm saying, here's, what I told it at the beginning, and then here's the guidelines you're supposed to follow.
You built these in the thread, or like how did
this
you
is what
determine
this
these
is what
are
the
all
automation this is what the automation did when it was processing people's. So like this one was for persons facing a health crisis. This holistic healing plan.
Question.
What's that?
How did you determine all of these sections had to be built?
Oh, that was here. I went to ChatGPT and I said, please give me specific guidelines on how to write a white paper. And then I cut and paste that into.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool.
That's the cheat code.
Yeah, it's the old, if you don't know how to do something in AI, ask the AI.
Yes.
And that's actually great for using O1 because O1 will do the chain of thought before it actually generates this. So if I took this and if I do a new one and I go to O1, put that same prompt in there.
It didn't switch.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. I did that today. I went to ask them how to build a macro to organize leads on a spreadsheet because the sales guys are using spreadsheets. Like, give that to me for an hour, and automatically took all of his color codes and changed them into numbers and ordered them, and then they can sort on them using the inherent things in Excel.
Sounds like data cleaning 101.
It only thought for 11 seconds on that, but I've seen it think for a lot longer than that. That's not
pretty good.
Bad.
I can't even go for a coffee, let alone take a sip in that time. Come on now.
So I have a question for you, Chris. So I have a scenario that I'm working on. Takes a form information, goes through an assistant. The assistant puts out what should be a spreadsheet, but it's putting it into one bundle under the result. How can I separate those different lines in the spreadsheet or different rows in the spreadsheet so that it can create another spreadsheet in a Google Sheets. Does that make sense?
I don't
So
think I follow you.
So my assistant is creating the markup for a spreadsheet, but when it spits it out, it is in one result, and I want it to be put back into a spreadsheet form. But
I think if I'm understanding your answer, like you have some spreadsheet data on line row 1, and you're doing something with it with ChatGPT, and then when you want to give it back to row 2 or a different tab or another spreadsheet entirely, you don't want it to show up in one single cell. You want it to spread across all the columns. Is that right?
You want to
put
retain
it
the
back into the
formatting.
correct columns.
Routine formatting, right?
You want to save it to a new sheet?
Well, but are you just trying to make sure that it doesn't go into one single cell, but it appropriately fills it back in under all the right column headers?
Right.
Otherwise, you get one blob just in the leftmost right column.
Absolutely.
And it's like, yeah. So what you can do is you can ask for like make this comma separated, and each data point will be having another comma. And then when you bring it back in, it'll separate those. So we were doing something like this in a workshop earlier. I think it was yesterday or today, and it was like the data was a list of companies. And we needed to take and break those companies and feed it into a UI. It was a third-party, SaaS tool, and they weren't showing up. And you'd have to like hit enter in the next one and enter in the next one. But all we needed to do is create columns with commas around every company name, and instantly you hit enter, and all of it breaks down into those little tiny tags for a CRM. So it's a similar kind of thing. As long as you get those commas, you can ask ChatGPT to do that or format it inside the prompts that you're doing.
Okay, so I should do, or you just said it, inside my Google Assistant, add that as part of my instructions to comma delimit the information. Okay, I'll give that a try. Thanks.
Solving one problem at a time.
Yeah, because that's one of the things with AI is, one of the last steps is how do you want it output? Do you want it outputted in a CSV file? Do you want a table? Do you want, that's the end of the thought process for prompting is how do you want the output?
Yeah, and that actually will translate to the HTML as well. If you create the table in Markdown and then convert it to HTML, it'll carry over as well to HTML if you're trying to put everything in one document.
Yeah, I'm trying to get everything into the Google Sheets so I can email. It's essentially almost the same thing you're doing with the white paper, just lower scale. So it puts it into the Google Sheets. And I've already got the Gmail set up to where it has a link to the Google Sheets and, it'll send the email. I already connected all that. It's just that middle portion. I was using text parsers, but those are kind of confusing to me.
There might be a way to create a Google Sheet from a comma delimited file. So if you just get it in a comma delimited format, you can probably just pump it into a new sheet if that's what you want to do.
That's what I'm going to try. Thank you, guys.
Great. Excellent call. Thank you, Chris. This was good. I liked actually the premeditated, you kind of had some stuff in advance and we can kind of skip around and zoom and pinch in on stuff. I think that trying to have everybody follow, this is just my input. You guys tell me if you like this. Like there's a version of this which is slow motion, real time. Everybody try and, bring like 10 or 20 people through. Everybody's clicking on the same thing. Wait, I'm stuck. This isn't working. And that can be a bit like wading through taffy. Whereas if you can get this thing where you've done all the heavy lifting and the thinking and the construction and configuration of something, but we can all lean forward and go, wait, I'm taking notes, but I know this is recorded. I can lean in and understand this stuff to the degree that you need to, right? Maybe Kim, as the CFO, doesn't need to know how to pull on all those levers, but she's understanding at the level she needs to, while Terrence is, deep in the weed whacker and they're going through the stuff and he's going to hit replay a couple times. So I think if we lean forward and understand, and when it comes to questions, we're asking like, wait, there's one thing that he introduced a new, outer concept or a new thing that we just need to unveil as we get deeper and deeper into these concepts, then we're building a layer of knowledge that will help, with whatever integration we need. Because I certainly don't want to ever do the plumbing of make. I just want to know what's possible and send my marching orders downstream.
I kind of like the way Ashley did her presentation earlier today, where she had videos showing her doing it and then she's kind of explaining it.
Yeah.
And it's easier to take questions when it's already done.
And it's you can zoom back and forth and just hit replay. I'm starting to use that in the capstone projects actually to say
that's awesome.
Like she did that in her capstone and it was like, oh, this is actually really great because you can get through 45 minutes of a presentation in a very short amount of time by just having a few pieces that you can fast forward and scrub through. high five to Karan. He's going to do that one. We just talked about that an hour ago.
Oh, awesome.
Any other last questions, feedback, or we'll wrap it up at 6:01, at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, round the clock.
Great value tonight, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Appreciate it,
Bye.
Chris. Thank you.
Have a good night.